All right, let's dive into a topic that seems simple on the surface, but is actually packed with history. What is the Bible? You know, it's this book that has literally shaped civilizations. But as we're about to find out, calling it one book is our first mistake.
I mean, have you ever walked into a bookstore and seen, say, a Protestant Bible sitting next to a Catholic one? You might notice one is, well, thicker than the other. And that's not just about the font size. They actually have different books inside. So why is that? That's the big puzzle we're going to solve today.
And here's our game plan for cracking this case. We'll start by totally rethinking what the Bible even is. We'll define some key terms like scripture and canon. Then we'll get into the history, figure out exactly why they're different, and even look at how translation plays a role. It's going to be fun.
Okay, first things first. To really get this, we have to start with a huge mindset shift. The whole idea of the Bible as a single book is where we get tripped up.
That's right. The Bible is really an anthology, a collection of dozens of completely separate writings, put together by a whole bunch of different people over hundreds and hundreds of years. So thinking of it as a library instead of a single book, that is the absolute key to understanding everything else.
And you know what's cool? The name itself gives us a huge clue. Our word Bible comes from the Greek phrase ta biblia, which literally means the books, plural. That word traces all the way back to an ancient port city named Byblos, which was a huge hub for exporting papyrus, the stuff they used for paper back then. So the origin of the word itself points to a collection of texts.
And what a wild collection it is. I mean, inside this library, you've got everything. You've got these epic poems, you've got detailed histories, you've got some really deep philosophical stuff, personal letters, and these totally mind-bending apocalyptic visions. It's this incredible literary tapestry woven together over 1,000 years.
So, okay, if the Bible is a library of ancient books, what makes these specific books so special? Why these and not others? Well, that leads us to our next big clue, the whole idea of scripture.
See, a text becomes scripture not just because of what it says, but because a community of people decides it has divine authority. It's this special status they give to certain writings, setting them apart as a guide for their faith and their life. So a text becoming scripture is really a human process of recognition.
But that just begs the next question, right? How did these communities decide which books made the cut and which ones didn't? This brings us to a super important concept called the canon. This is absolutely central to our mystery.
The word canon basically means a measuring stick. And in this context, it's the official list, the final roster of books that are considered scripture. And let me tell you, creating this list was not quick or easy. It was a messy, fascinating debate that went on for centuries.
Just look at the New Testament. The books themselves were written in the 1st century, but it took almost 300 more years to really settle on that final list of 27 books we know today. You have these early attempts at a list, like something called the Muratorian fragment. Way later, you've got the historian Eusebius still talking about which books were recognized and which were still disputed. It wasn't until a series of church councils in the late 300s that the list got widely locked in.
And here's a quote that shows this debate right in action. This is Eusebius writing in the early 4th century, and he's just openly saying, hey, books like James and Jude, people are still arguing about them. This wasn't some kind of secret. It was a very real, ongoing conversation about which texts truly had that apostolic authority.
And this isn't just based on written accounts. We have hard, physical proof. We found these incredible manuscripts, like the Codex Sinaiticus from the 4th century. It's one of the oldest, most complete Bibles ever discovered. It's an archaeological treasure that gives us a literal snapshot of which books were being copied and bound together at that time. It's like looking at the canon as it was still being formed.
Okay, so now we have all the clues in front of us. We know the Bible is a library, and we know the official list, the canon, was hammered out over a really long time. So now we can finally solve our big puzzle. Why are modern Bibles different? So, here's the big reveal. While there were all those early debates about the New Testament, pretty much all Christian traditions today agree on the same 27 books. The real disagreement, the reason a Catholic Bible is thicker than a Protestant one, is all about the Old Testament.
And this difference comes down to a historical fork in the road. See, most early Christians spoke Greek, so they used a popular Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures called the Septuagint. But this version included several books that weren't in the final official Hebrew Bible, which is known as the Tanakh. Fast forward hundreds of years to the Protestant Reformation. The Reformers made a choice. They decided to base their Old Testament on that shorter Hebrew Bible.
Meanwhile, Catholic and Orthodox traditions said, nope, we're sticking with the longer version we've always used, the one based on the Septuagint.
And the result of that historical split is what you see right here. A Protestant Old Testament has 39 books. A Catholic one is 46, including books like Tobit and Judith. And some Orthodox Bibles have even more, around 51. It's basically different branches of the same faith using slightly different library collections.
But hold on, we're not quite done. The differences don't just stop with which books are included. There's one last layer of complexity we have to talk about, and that's translation.
Yeah, translating these ancient texts isn't like doing a math problem. There isn't just one right answer. It's really an art. Every single translator has to make choices. Are they going to go for a super literal, word-for-word translation? Or are they going to try to capture the overall meaning, the thought-for-thought idea? These decisions about style, tone, and even specific words can lead to Bibles that sound and feel very different.
Just look at this one verse from the book of Romans. The classic King James Version from 1611 is very formal, very direct. The more modern NIV adds this little bit of punch, this excitement with an exclamation point. And then you have the New Living Translation, the NLT, which is all about making it as clear and easy to read as possible. Same verse, 3 different translations, 3 totally different vibes. It just goes to show you, the version you pick up really shapes how you experience the text.
So let's step back for a second and put all these puzzle pieces together. We kicked this off by asking a simple question. Why aren't all Bibles the same? And now, I think we've got our answer. It really boils down to these 4 key ideas. First, the Bible's a library, not a single book. Second, certain books became scripture because communities decided they were special. Third, that official list, the canon, was hammered out over centuries of human debate. And finally, different traditions ended up with different canons and different translation styles. And that's what creates all the variety we see on the bookshelf today.
When you get right down to it, the Bible didn't just fall out of the sky fully formed. It's the end product of a long, complicated, and deeply human process. A story of writing, collecting, arguing, and translating that stretches across thousands of years and multiple empires.
And that really just leaves us with one final question to think about. Whether you're a person of faith or not, how does understanding this complex human history behind the Bible change the way we read it and think about it today? It's definitely something worth mulling over. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.